TravelJoy Invoices can be used to collect a credit card authorization, enabling you to pay a supplier on their behalf, or to process payment immediately and deposit the funds into your bank account, such as for a trip planning fee. The supplier invoice option collects an authorization, while the direct invoice option processes payment for deposit. If you click the blue Create button from a trip page and you do not have access to the direct invoice option, this likely means your bank information is not on file or not yet verified. You can enter your bank info under Settings, and we will reach out when you are approved for direct payment processing. Regardless of which type of invoice you create in TravelJoy, the invoice consists of three parts: the item list at the top, where you add airfare, lodging, tours, and other pieces of the client's travel experience; the payment schedule at the bottom, where you add the deposit and schedule all required payments due from the client; and the gray settings box in the middle. Today we'll be building a direct invoice. We've chosen this option because it has a few additional options that aren't necessary on supplier invoices. So at the conclusion of this tutorial, you'll have the ability to build both types of invoices. To get started, from your trip page, click the blue Create button and choose Invoice Direct. We'll begin with an empty invoice, and our first action will be to add an item by clicking Add Item. Click the box below this to see your list of available items, such as air, cruise, hotel, and so on. If you'd like, you can more quickly find a specific item by typing it in the search box. In this example, we'll add insurance. In the box that pops up, you are only required to enter the price. Once you've done so, you can click Save. This is a bare-bones example of adding an invoice item. Now let's add another item. This time we'll choose air. As you see, we have many more options here. While we only need to add the price, as seen in the last example, it'll be helpful to our client to add in these details for future reference. For example, I'll change the name from air to outbound flight. Next, I'll add some details related to the flight and click Save. For the final item on this invoice, we'll need a return flight. Instead of adding it from scratch, let's use this duplicate button right here that looks like two sheets of paper to create an exact copy of the existing outbound flight item. In the box that comes up, we'll change outbound flight to return flight, and also change a few other key details below. On this item, we'll be making a commission, so let's track that. To do so, click the Commission tab. Here, you'll fill out the supplier name, booking date, and expected commission date and dollar amount. The client will not be able to see this information. This can be added for any item on any invoice, although it is completely optional. When complete, click Save. Now, let's review the settings for this invoice. The name field is optional, and it can be very helpful when searching for a specific invoice later. We'll call this one Amanda's Flight to Lima. Next, we'll choose the owner of this invoice. This is an important step, as any invoice can only have one owner responsible for payment. By default, it is always the primary traveler, so if a secondary passenger on the trip is responsible for some of the payment, this is how you would send them an invoice of their own. In this case, we'll keep Amanda Lynn. Now, for the two boxes that are unique to direct invoices. The first box asks how you'd like your client to pay. You can choose credit cards, bank transfers, or both. Most agents choose both. The two key differences between these options are that bank transfers have a lower processing fee, while credit card payments reach your bank account more quickly. You can find details on this in our Help Center. The other box asks whether you'd like to charge the client a convenience fee. This determines whether you or the client will be responsible for paying the processing fee. If the box is checked, the processing fees will be added to the client's invoice automatically, and when unchecked, processing fees will be removed from the client's payment prior to being deposited into your bank account. Finally, let's create the payment schedule. We'll start by clicking Add Payment. The payment generated by this action will be due today and will be for the full remaining amount of the invoice. The due date, payment description, and payment amount all have a blue pencil icon next to them, which means that they can all be edited by clicking on that icon. Let's change the payment description to deposit and the amount to $250. Take note of the two numbers at the bottom right corner. The first one tells you the total of your scheduled payments so far, while the second one tells you the total price of the invoice. This helps ensure that the payment schedule covers the entire cost of the invoice before you send it. Let's click Add Payment again. Just like before, the payment generated by this action is due today and is for the full remaining amount due on the invoice. We'll quickly change the due date, description, and payment amount, and we'll add a third payment and also edit the details of the third payment. Now we have a full payment schedule, so we're ready to send the invoice. However, first, if your client has already paid their deposit, you may want to mark this payment as paid before you send it. You can do that by clicking the Mark as Paid button on the deposit, choosing whether to send a receipt in the box that pops up, and clicking Mark as Paid one more time. The page reloads and the deposit is properly marked as paid. From here, click Next, Save and Review Email to pull up your email to the client, and then click Send, and your client will receive the invoice momentarily. Once the client pays this direct invoice, funds will be deposited into your account according to the payout schedule, which you can find on our Help Center. However, if this had been a supplier invoice, you would be notified when the client authorized payment, and you would then be able to pull up the client's payment information, pay the supplier directly on the client's behalf, and then mark that payment as paid, just as we did in the previous step. You can always locate the client's payment information on their client profile on the Payment Info tab.